Hey, beautiful thrivers. Today I want to talk to you about the damage that happens as a result of narcissistic parents, the trauma of growing up with narcissistic parents. And before we start off, I just want to make this very, very clear. A lot of people believe that both of the parents were narcissistic. I generally don't agree with that theory. What I really believe has happened is that you have a narcissistic parent and a codependent parent who has been incredibly traumatized. Their inner identity has been shattered by the narcissist, and they are stuck in their wounds and their victimization, which means that they're unavailable, which means that they're triggered, which means that they can appear to be very narcissistic. Because when you're around sick people and you get infiltrated by them, you get very, very sick. Also, too, as a healer in this community for the last 15 years, some of the most damaged adults that I have helped truly recover and thrive had a narcissistic parent, a very broken, traumatized, codependent parent who was also hugely unavailable, because hurt people, sadly, hurt people. And what happened was they took on the programs of trying to survive the narcissistic parent, but also following in the footsteps of the codependent parent of subjugating their rights and their boundaries, and also too often trying to rescue the codependent parent from the narcissist, which is very, very damaging for a child. So I just want you to keep that in mind as we go through the traumas from narcissistic parents. Now, the traumas from narcissistic parents and or codependent traumatized parents often will create a codependent or a narcissist, because children don't learn by what they say. They learn and absorb by what we do and who we're being. And with the codependent child trying to survive a toxic environment, what they will often do is try to win love and approval. They try to fix. They try to grant more to be able to regulate the parent's behavior. And with the narcissist, what they do as a child is they bury their true self, they put a fictitious character in its place as the buffer, and they try to regulate their emotional self through the false self, which is what narcissism is all about. So let's go through the common things that happen with the traumas in a narcissistic family. Okay, so the first one is the emotional unavailability and invalidation. So that can be emotional or literal. So the narcissist doesn't care about people's feelings and seeing them as an autonomous blood and soul human being. So the child is not met at a level of emotional validation. And also, too, the narcissist could be very, very absent because they're pursuing narcissistic supply and the things that they need in their life, which is often outside of the family. So the message that comes through to the child is, I'm not valid. I'm not important. I'm invisible. My feelings are unimportant. So the codependent child will try to please and try to earn love and approval by trying to be nicer and kinder and do more and be seen more and acquiesce to every demand and be the really good child that does all of the right things. Whereas the narcissist, and they may even be a high achiever because that's the way that they win love and approval, is by being, getting good grades or being at sport or whatever it is. And that's the more sensitive codependent child. Whereas the narcissistic child in the false self may be more of, well, I'm going to lie or manipulate, or when I get blamed for something, I'm going to put it back onto the sensitive child and I'm going to set them up for the fall, and I'm going to lie or say whatever it takes for me to get out of trouble. And also too, maybe I'm going to rebel and I'm going to start getting into addictions, and I will pull away from the family and I'll go and get narcissistic supply and attention outside of the family. And also the codependent can do that too. Don't think that these are hard and fast rules. It can overlap. All right. So the next thing is that the environment is incredibly unstable. You don't have a consistency there. So 1 minute, the narcissistic parent could be all loving and gushing and bringing presents. And when a narcissist is high on narcissistic supply, when they've had the attention and the acclaim and the notoriety and whatever it is, the ego feed that fills them up temporarily, they can be the most delightful, loving people to be around, even to their children. So it could be gifts and love and attention, and yet it can spin on a dime, because when a narcissist is low on supply, then it is all about them. They're entitled, they're superior, they're cruel, they're unstable, they can snap very, very quickly. So the child learns and experiences that things are unstable. Now, what happens with the codependent child is they start feeling energy a lot. And it's really about psychically, intuitively trying to read the room, trying to feel what's going on inside of other people to be able to navigate what might happen next. And of course, what this means is a disconnection from self. So many people in our beautiful community are empaths, are sensitives, who have lost touch with their own inner being, their own datum of what's safe and secure and true, and what are my values and what are my boundaries. Because I'm out there enmeshing with other people's energy, that means that other people's energy is controlling me rather than me being in control of my own energy and setting my limits and boundaries. So you may be able to relate to that because it's very, very common. Now, with the narcissistic child in unstable environments, again, they're going to find their own coping strategies, which is to disconnect and split more from the inner being, to not take the brunt of what's going on, to concoct more of a story of the narrative of who they are in their fantasy world, possibly to escape the family. Again, lie, manipulate, do whatever it takes to escape those brunts, and chase narcissistic supply and addictions to try to self-medicate what's going on, and living in this fantasy world of the narcissistic narrative. So what also happens in narcissistic families and toxic families, and again, please understand, codependents who are very traumatized and victimized also are not able to meet the children at a healthy inner level. And we all went through this until we healed. And this is why I am such a stickler to help our children. Even if you're co-parenting, you have to heal you, because one solid parent leading the way is enough, and it works, and it's so important. We've got to get our oxygen mask on first. So what happens in these toxic families is there is such a lack of self-soothing. So when the child is traumatized or distraught, and age appropriately, this is normal with kids anyway, let alone being in a toxic family, the child is not met and soothed and held and validated and learning how to process emotions through to completion, there is no outer soothing. And rather, it can be even worse than that. It's like, well, if you want to be upset, I'm going to give you something to be upset about. Narcissists are terminally unavailable for anybody else's negative emotions. And in fact, the narcissist usually despises that. You're meant to be there for me. How dare you want me to be there for you? Their level of care and kindness and nurturing is incredibly minimal, unless they're an altruistic narcissist and then they use it to manipulate. You know, I'm going to be so there for you, but now I want the payoff. Okay, but what's common with the child is that the narcissist is horribly unavailable, actually gets annoyed at any emotional ruckus, and the victimized parent, the codependent parent, can really wallow in the wounds of the child and their own guilt and their own wounds, get in there and compound the whole thing, and they're not leading the way out of it with appropriate soothing and care and kindness and empowerment. So what happens here is children start developing anxiety disorders, which means that when I suffer an emotional injury, I don't know how to self-soothe, so I'm going to look for outer addictions to try to numb out what I'm feeling on the inside. So these are obsessive compulsive disorders and behaviors, which obviously lead to things like smoking and drinking and, sex with the wrong people, excessive social media and devices, and all sorts of things, rather than knowing how to self-partner and be with self because the parent didn't partner them. And this is why, as parents, helping our children and our future generations, we have to come home to self-partner with ourselves, put our oxygen mask on first, and then we can help lead our children to self-partnering, even if they're adults. Even if we didn't do this when they were young, by stepping up and doing it now, you can make a massive difference in their life. So the narcissistic child who's not getting emotional soothing has already disconnected from their true inner being, has deemed it irrelevant, hates its vulnerability. So with the lack of care and solidness and being met by the parent, the narcissistic child turns into a rabid consumer of things and people and stuff to feed the false self, the ego. So this is about acclaim, attention, the latest gadget, the thing that makes me look cool, the hot girl liking me, and they really disconnect from their true wholesome inner being and go down that track, which you can understand. The other thing that happens in narcissistic families is lying, pathological lying, and also really careless, neglectful lying. So the narcissistic parent might say, well, I'll come and watch you at your sporting event. And then something comes up and the narcissistic parent decides, well, I'd rather do this because I'm selfish. And the child gets let down. Or the narcissistic parent will say, I love you and I care about you so much, but yet their actions are the complete and utter opposite. And as I said before, children learn by what we do, not by what we say. So the codependent child is very, very likely to get caught in the trap of, well, first of all, I can't trust myself because I don't know what's real. I'm being lied to. My parent is my God. And I don't have a cognitive filter to say, well, you're full of it and this is garbage. And the truth is actually this. It's rather, well, I thought the truth was this. I sensed it and I felt it. You've just told me a huge pathological lie. You must be right. I must be wrong. and therefore I can never trust myself. And the problem with that is, with the codependent child, is they'll get into relationships where they focus on believing people's words and don't evaluate the actions or how that actually reflects back to their inner being and what feels right for them. It's a very big trap. And the narcissistic child will actually learn to lie. It's like lying is completely fine. And, I need to lie to be able to get the false self what it wants. And lying's not wrong. Lying is a means to an end. And that's what happens. And you may be able to, there's a lot more, but that's enough for this video because it's all pretty significant. And you will probably be able to relate this to how this has affected you. And it's really important for us to understand that. But what is even more important is to understand that regardless of what's happened to us, we can heal and we can lead the way for our children and our future generations. And we do have in this community so many parents who absolutely are the codependent, victimized, traumatized person. I was one of them myself, hugely. And when we're broken and we're not addressing that and we're trying to help our children because we can see how messed up they are and how traumatizing it is for them, we're actually not helping them. And this was so true, and I've seen it so many times in this community, is when people have tried to help their children and haven't led the way by what I do, who I'm being, helping ourselves first, our children can be alienated against us, they push away from us, they don't trust us, we don't help them. And we can even get into the trap of feeling so victimized and broken, we resent them for not validating what's happening to us. And yet we're the adult, we're the parent. It's our job to validate and heal ourselves. And then I promise you they get it and they follow. And they start healing and empowering themselves as well. And when we do it in the quantum way, which is what my work's all about, you will find just by focusing on what you need to do for you, you'll get better, you do better. And that soul entanglement that you have with your children through genetics and through love is so powerful that when you shift and heal, they come where you go. They just follow. We have so many children doing so well, even in 50% parallel parenting with a narcissist. They're finding their inner identity, their courage, their strength. They're able to detach from unavailable, irresponsible others and still know their self-worth and start navigating and generating their lives. Stop trying to hold people responsible that have got no capacity, desire, or resources to be healthy in relationships. And know how to be in healthy relationship with self and life and people who are available and resourceful. Because their codependent, victimized parent healed and led the way. And what incredible skills and recovery for life moving on, which means your children are not going to have to fall into the programs of being narcissists or codependents and toxic relationships. So I hope that this has made sense. And I'm going to put up a link with this video, which is my Recover, Heal, Thrive 2-part masterclass, because it explains so much of this at a deep level. It's going to give you clarity, it's going to give you courage, and it's going to give you a way out of this. Not just for you, but for your children and their future generations. Together, we can all break these cycles one parent at a time. I hope that this has helped. Check out the link, and lots of love. Bye-bye.